Alexandra Eala will play number 72, Renata Zarazua.
Somewhere in a quiet corner of the Philippines, a 21-year-old girl used to practice her serve against a concrete wall because there wasn't always a court available. That same girl is about to walk onto the most famous lawn in tennis history. Not as a wild card, not as a feel-good story, but as a seeded player, something no Filipino in the entire 148-year history of Wimbledon has ever been able to say. And here's the part that should stop you cold. 3 weeks before she gets there, she does something that the tennis world genuinely wasn't prepared for. She walks into Berlin, picks up a racket, and dismantles the woman widely considered the most dangerous server on the planet. Not in 3 sets, not in a tiebreak war, in straight sets. And then, and this is the part I keep coming back to, she does it again the very next day. Back-to-back top 10 wins, on grass, as a wild card. Her name is Alex, and what's happening to her right now is not a hot streak. It's something much more difficult to explain, and by the time I'm done, you'll understand exactly why the tennis world should be paying very close attention to what happens next. Let me take you back to Berlin, because you need to feel what that week actually looked like before you can understand what it means. The Steffi Graf Stadion is not a forgiving place. The crowd knows tennis, the surface is fast, and walking in as a wild card, meaning you weren't even supposed to be seeded or protected in the draw, means the tournament essentially believes you might be useful to fill a slot. Alex didn't just fill the slot, she rearranged the furniture. Her first major test of that week was Elena Rybakina, 2-time Grand Slam champion, a woman who serves so hard and so flat that most players have already mentally conceded the point before the ball bounces. The kind of player who doesn't just win matches, she suffocates them. Alex walks out, drops serve in the first set, goes down a break, and here's where most players, even good ones, start to negotiate with themselves. They start thinking about damage limitation. They start playing not to lose. Alex does the opposite. She breaks back. She wins the first set 7-5. She wins the second 6-4. And then she says something in the post-match press conference that I've been thinking about ever since. She says, "I'm still shaking." But here's what makes that quote so fascinating. The tennis she played was not shaking at all. It was cold, calculated, structurally brilliant in a way that made analysts rewind passages of the match just to figure out what exactly she was doing differently. And then, before the shock of that result has even settled, she's back on court the next day against world number 8, Elina Svitolina. And she wins again. 6-3, 6-4, no drama, no 5-set escape. Just controlled, dominant, left-handed tennis that made one of the best players on the tour look like she was arriving one step too late to every single ball. That's when I started asking a different question. Not, is Alex good? We already know she's good. The question that started bothering me was this: what is it about grass specifically that turns Alex into something almost unreasonable? Because the numbers heading into Wimbledon are not normal. Her grass court record this season going in sits at 9 wins and 2 losses. She won the Birmingham WTA 125 title. She went deep in Bad Homburg. She beat Donna Vekic, the reigning Queen's Club champion, on the way to the Berlin semi-finals. 9-2, on the surface that most players spend their entire careers trying to solve. And she's 21. She's never even been seeded at a Grand Slam before. So what is happening here? Greg Rusedski, a man who actually knows what it feels like to serve on Wimbledon's grass, said something that I think points in the right direction. He said the surface allows her to get a little more pace on the ball, stay earlier, and being left-handed, her slice serve slides away in a direction that's genuinely difficult to read. That's true, but I think there's a layer underneath that which gets missed in every surface-level tactical breakdown, and it has to do with something Alex does that very few players her age can do at this level. She returns serve like she's angry at it, and I mean that as the highest possible compliment. Here's the statistic that won't leave me alone. In that match against Rybakina in Berlin, Alex won 19 points off second serve returns. Rybakina won 9. Let me make sure that lands properly. Elena Rybakina, a 2-time Grand Slam champion, one of the biggest servers in the history of women's tennis, was being outreturned on her own second serve at more than 2-1. On grass, against a 21-year-old wildcard. What that number tells you isn't just that Alex returns well. It tells you that she is refusing to let points develop on anyone else's terms. She is shortening the geometry of every single exchange from the very first ball. She's forcing opponents into defensive positions they never expected to be in before the rally even starts. And on a surface where the ball stays low, where angles compress, where you cannot afford to give up an inch of time, that returning ability becomes something close to a weapon of mass disruption. Left-handed, generating pace and spin in directions that righties simply don't produce, arriving early and attacking, it is genuinely borderline unreasonable when it's working. And right now, it is working. Which brings us to Wimbledon, and to the specific weight of what June 29th actually means. 148 years. That's how long Wimbledon has existed. Kings and queens have sat in that royal box. Champions have broken down crying on center court. Rivalries have been born and destroyed on those lawns. And in all of that time, through every era of the sport, through every wave of internationalization, through every expansion of the global tennis footprint, not one Filipino player has ever been seeded at this tournament. Not one. Until Alex walks through those gates ranked 30th in the world, seeded 29th, carrying the weight of an entire nation's hope in a sport that nation has rarely been invited to believe in at this level. But I want you to hold that thought, because the history part is the easy part to talk about. The harder thing, the thing that actually keeps the best coaches up at night, is what being seeded for the first time at a Grand Slam actually does to a player psychologically. And this is where the story gets complicated in a way I don't think enough people are discussing, because being a wildcard is a superpower. Nobody expects you to win. Every victory is a gift. Every upset is a bonus. The pressure flows toward your opponent. They're the ones who are supposed to beat you, and if they don't, they're embarrassed. But the moment you're seeded, everything inverts. Now you're the expected winner. Every unforced error gets cataloged differently in your own head. Every break of serve feels like a referendum on whether you actually belong. The scoreboard pressure is different. The crowd expectation is different. Even the way you walk onto the court is different. Because now you're not hunting, you're being hunted. And Alex has never navigated this before. Not at a Grand Slam, not on grass, not with an entire country watching. And here is the detail that sharpens this tension even further. Her first-round opponent knows exactly what she looks like when she's uncomfortable. Renata Zarazua of Mexico, ranked 76 in the world, has not only played Alex before, she's beaten her. In August 2024, at an ITF event, Zarazua won the first set 6-3 before Alex fought back to take the second and third. A 3-set battle. Zarazua won that day. She knows how the left-handed serve spins away. She knows where the forehand wants to go. She knows the pace differentials Alex generates and how to disrupt the rhythm before it builds into something unstoppable. There's no mystery in this matchup for the Mexican player. And in tennis, knowledge of your opponent's patterns is not just information. It's a form of psychological armor. Zarazua walks in holding at least some of it. And then, because nothing about this story is ever simple, it turns out these two women are not just opponents. They were doubles partners. At last year's French Open, they played together, reached the second round, and shared a court in an entirely different emotional register. They know each other's tendencies not just from scouting tape, but from standing on the same side of the net. That cuts both ways. Zarazua understands Alex's weapons, but Alex knows exactly how Zarazua moves, how she problem solves, how she responds when points don't go her way. This first round is richer, stranger, and more layered than almost any opening match you'll see in the draw. And at the center of it is a test that isn't really about tennis ability at all, because on pure talent, Alex is clearly the better player right now. The question, the one that matters, is which version of Alex shows up. The one from Berlin, who was brave from the first point and dictated every exchange? Or a slightly tighter, slightly more careful version, managing the match, protecting the lead, trying not to lose rather than trying to win? Because here's something I've been sitting with. Last year at Wimbledon, Alex lost in the first round to Barbara Krejcikova. The score was 3-6, 6-2, 6-1. That second and third set reversal is significant. It tells you that Krejcikova found something during the match, some structural crack in Alex's game, and once she found it, she pulled on that thread until the whole thing unraveled. A good grass court run in the weeks before Wimbledon, followed by an early exit. The same pattern appeared 2 years running, and the question I keep returning to is whether that pattern has been addressed, truly structurally addressed, or whether a patient, experienced opponent can still find the same door. Based on everything I've watched this summer, I believe the work has been done. The footwork has tightened. You can see it in how early she's arriving to balls she used to have half hit. The decision-making under pressure has matured in a way that's hard to fake. There's a moment against Svitolina in Berlin, 0-30, 5-2, second set, Alex serving, where most players at this stage of their career feel the moment tighten around them. Alex wins the next 4 points to close the match. That's not talent. That's internalization. That's a player who has genuinely absorbed what competing at the top means and stopped treating the big moments as interruptions to her game and started treating them as the game itself. That's the shift. That's what makes me believe this Wimbledon is different. But I also want to be honest about what I don't know, because fair analysis demands it. Seeded status is new territory. Carrying a nation's expectation at a tournament where the entire world is watching is new territory. And the first round of a Grand Slam, even against a lower-ranked opponent, is its own psychological ecosystem that has swallowed better-prepared players whole. So when I say I think Alex wins this match, what I mean is that I think the Alex from Berlin wins this match comfortably. What I genuinely don't know is which version of her walks through the gates at the All England Club on June 29th. Now, I want to say something that I think matters beyond the tennis. Because this story isn't just about a 21-year-old with a 9-2 grass record and a lethal left-handed serve. When Alex played her opening round match at the Australian Open earlier this year, thousands of Filipino fans descended on Melbourne Park and formed a line that stretched hundreds of yards through the grounds. The BBC reported it. Tennis Australia noticed it. Players noticed it. That is not a tennis story. That is a cultural tidal wave. A sport that has historically been concentrated in certain geographical pockets, Europe, North America, parts of South America and Australia, is watching something happen in Southeast Asia that it hasn't seen before. Not a one-off flash of brilliance from a prodigy who burns out at 23, but a 21-year-old with a complete game, a competitive intelligence well beyond her years, and a trajectory that is genuinely pointing upward. When she walks onto those lawns at the All England Club, she does not walk out alone. She walks out carrying the attention and the ambition and the longing of an entire sporting culture that has been waiting, perhaps without even knowing it was waiting, for exactly this kind of moment. Wimbledon amplifies everything it touches. The white kit requirement, the absence of sponsor boards on court, the silence between points that exists nowhere else in sport. All of it creates a pressure chamber that either exposes who you really are or clarifies it. And I think for Alex, those lawns are about to clarify something that the last few weeks have already been quietly revealing. Let me tell you what I expect tactically, because I think the how matters as much as the who. Alex at her best is dictatorial. She doesn't participate in rallies. She ends them before they start. The serve out wide in the deuce court, spinning away from a right-handed opponent's backhand before they can even load up. The inside-out forehand controlling the middle of the court, denying the opponent the angle they're looking for. The early return pressing Zarazúa's second serve before she can find her footing in the point. That is Alex's architecture when she is fully engaged and fully brave. And here's the temptation she needs to resist. The temptation to play conservatively. To manage the match. To avoid the kind of scrappy emotional back and forth that a player who has beaten you before can drag you into if you let your foot off the gas, because conservative tennis against Zarazua doesn't produce a comfortable win. It produces a fight, and a fight at 4-4 in the third set of a first-round Grand Slam is not where a first-time seeded player wants to be finding out whether her nerve holds. Aggressive left-handed tennis from the first point is not just the best tactical choice. It is the only one that makes sense given everything we know about how her game operates at its ceiling. The question, one more time, is whether she trusts it when the lights are at their brightest. And they will be bright. Wimbledon is going to amplify this story in a way that nothing before has. The commentators will mention the history. The cameras will find the Filipino flags in the crowd, and there will be flags, many of them. Every winner she hits will feel slightly larger than usual. Every mistake will echo a little longer. That is the particular cruelty and magic of being the first. Every moment is weighted by what it represents. And yet, and this is the part of the Alex story that I find most genuinely compelling, she seems almost unsettlingly comfortable with being watched. The post-Berlin press conferences, the way she carries herself on court against the biggest names in the sport, the fact that she described herself as still shaking, and yet played with the composure of someone who had been doing this at this level for a decade. There is a gap between how she feels and how she plays, and that gap, that ability to compete cleanly even when your nervous system is firing in every direction, is not coachable. It is a competitive gift, and it is operating right now at a level that should make every other player in her section of the draw quietly uncomfortable. So here's where we land. June 29th. Alex walks out at Wimbledon, the first Filipino player ever seeded at this tournament. And the moment the umpire calls time, every point that follows will be part of a record that no one from her country has ever written before. Her opponent knows her. The surface loves her. The form is real. The seeded status is new. And somewhere beneath all of that, in the part of her game that's still growing and sharpening and figuring itself out, there's a player who 3 weeks ago looked at Elena Rybakina across a net on grass and decided, without hesitation, even after going a breakdown, that she was the better player that day. And proved it. That decision, that fearlessness, that refusal to negotiate with a moment just because it's large, that is what the tennis world is about to get a very close look at. Rybakina was the mountain. Svitolina was the mountain. This is the first step of something I believe could become the deepest run of Alex's Grand Slam career. But it only works if she goes out there, from the very first serve, and plays like she already knows that. Because the lawns of SW19 don't reward hesitation. They reward players who arrive on them already decided. And everything, every match, every win, every quiet early morning hitting against a concrete wall somewhere far from here, suggests that Alex already is. That Alex already is.